Hello guys, to be on here, and this will be my very first ever reaction video. Today we will be reacting to Dark Side L. If you guys like this type of content, feel free to let me know in the comments below, so let's get started, shall we?
Alright, hello ladies and gentlemen.
Hello Phil.
Darkside Phil here with a brand new playthrough for you, a retro game. A game that, for many people, is held in high regard as possibly the best game in the entire series.
Ironically enough, Resident Evil 4 was technically my very first Resident Evil game. I've only been playing Resident Evil for 2 years now, but in my opinion, Phil should have just started the game because in the first like 8 minutes or so of this video, Phil just rambles on about Resident Evil 4. I understand you want to hype the game up, Phil, but at the same time, as a viewer myself and a content creator, most people just want to watch you play the game instead of hearing a lot of non-tent, and most of this video is non-tent, unfortunately. So let's continue on with his rambling.
It's undoubtedly the game that changed the direction of an already pre-established series that was held in high regard, and some people absolutely love the change, some people hated the changes. I actually remember when this game came out, it was actually critically praised, but a lot of common gamers said that they hated it. But I think that over time
I think the reason why people hated it back then, I didn't know because I was like really young at the time. It came out in 2005. So I was like, I don't know if it was in the single digits, but I was young enough to not like it. But I think it's because a lot of people back then probably didn't like the fact that it strayed too far away from how Resident Evil normally is. Because since I've been starting playing the older games, it's kind of very, like, it's very different from modern Resident Evil. So I can kind of see where they were coming from back then, but Resident Evil 4 now is very popular and well loved in the community. But I guess back then people just really didn't like the fact that it was more action oriented and it removed like most of the survival horror elements of the older titles. Like a lot of the older titles, have the whole item box thing and having limited inventory and the tank controls and the fixed camera angles, which Resident Evil 4 basically got rid of. So I guess that's the reason why.
happened is that people realized that change is not always bad. It just depends on the extent of the change. Because as you guys know, as time progressed and the series moved on, it went further and further away from its survival horror roots.
Well, change in video games isn't always terrible. Sometimes changes do make the franchise better, but some changes ruin the franchises. Like a few series that I own, like once they started like removing certain aspects of the franchise and changed it, it made the games worse in my opinion, but that's another topic another day.
And move more towards an action-based run-and-gun shooter. And, for some people, they liked it. Others, unfortunately, panned it, saying that it had veered too far from its original source material. And that's where we are today with the Resident Evil series, with the series actually in kind of jeopardy. A lot of people wondering if Capcom will ever make another mainstream Resident Evil game, or if
Well, Capcom now made a new Resident Evil game in February of this year, but I felt like 9, in my opinion, is okay. Like, of course, it brought back Resident Evil now, but maybe at some point I might do a review on the game and give my opinion on how I feel about it. But it's okay. It's an okay game. I don't know why it's praised so much, but I guess because they brought back Leon and had a very satisfying gameplay and also had the survival horror elements with Grace. It just felt like two separate entities for me stuck together. But at a different time, I might go more into detail about my opinions on Resident Evil 9. So let's get back to Phil.
they're going to reboot the series because of the kind of reaction that we had to Resident Evil 6. But undoubtedly, Resident Evil 4 did a few things a lot differently.
Resident Evil 6 is okay as well. It has a lot of problems, but I understand a lot of people hate 6. But I think if Capcom made the story less conjointed and discombobulated and just made it one piece of story and had each story happen in order instead of like one happening at one moment, another one happening very early and then is later. They should have just made it cohesive instead of it being like disjointed and everybody doing multiple different things at one time. It's too much. And also, I think a lot of people also complained about the menus. The menus sucked in 6, and I can agree the menus were terrible in 6, and the HUDs and everything were really bad, but it's okay for what it is.
Than the previous games in the series. It had a lot of balls. It took the series from this kind of fixed camera, kind of clunky tank control series, and it moved it into the modern era of, kind of over the shoulder third person camera, more action based combat, but it still had a lot of puzzle elements.
Not really. Resident Evil 4 has a little bit of puzzles, but they're very insignificant and not even long enough to be considered puzzles. And they're very straightforward. It's not like you have to really think about doing the puzzles and have to like really figure it out. But four of the puzzles are like incredibly minimal and like it's just from point A to point B. It's not that much.
Survival horror elements in it. It's just that it changed. It set the groundwork for the series to change. Let's put it that way. And so we're going to be beginning the Resident Evil 4 HD playthrough. Obviously, here I am playing it on the Xbox 360. You might be saying, why am I playing it on the Xbox 360? No particular reason, actually. When Resident Evil 6 came out, I purchased the Chronicles or whatever the collector's edition was of the game for both Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, because both came with different content. One came with a movie and the codes for Resident Evil Code Veronica XHD and Resident Evil 4 HD, while the PlayStation 3 version came with Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So
that would have been a good deal. The only thing that sucks about that is most of the time they come through codes, and a lot of codes have expiration dates. Even if you bought that game now, the collector's edition now, this video is like 12 years old that filled it. But if you would have bought that collection now and tried using those codes, they either would have been expired or used. That's the reason why I'm kind of against codes, because like I got the what was it, Resident Evil 2 remake like 1 or 2 years ago, and I had the codes in the actual box, but it was either used or expired. So it kind of defeats the purpose of buying collector's editions now because they have codes, and 9 out of 10 times the codes are expired. So it kind of sucks. But in my opinion, they should just put the DLC on the disc instead of it being separated, or just put the content on the disc as content that you unlock instead of the content being locked behind a paywall or a code.
it was like completely different content that came with each one. Now, I believe that I actually gave away Resident Evil 4 HD on the PS3 years ago. So I said to myself, well, I got to use the code that I still have, and that's brought us to where we are here today. Full disclosure, I did play Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, but never got very far in it. And here's why. Number one, I loved the graphics on the GameCube, but I hated the controller.
The GameCube was my very first console that I've ever owned as a kid. I got it when I was like 6 years old, and I still have it today. It's like 20 years old now. I never had any problems with the GameCube controller. Yes, it's like very bulky and kind of hard to use, but it's not as bad as the Nintendo 64 controller. In my opinion, that controller's worse because back then when people were playing Mario Party for the Nintendo 64, people were cutting their thumbs open because of the rough texture of the control stick. Because the control stick, for some odd reason, Nintendo decided to put in the very center of the console's controller instead of it being on the sides like controllers are now where they have the thumbsticks. So they started issuing out gloves back then for people because they kept cutting their fingers because of the control stick. I've had that controller for like 20, not that specific controller, but I've had controllers for the GameCube and I've never cut my fingers. So I understand the buttons layout is kind of weird, but it's not that bad of a controller.
I thought the GameCube controller is a joke, and let's face it, both the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube controllers were not designed for gamers. The things looked like they were designed for preschoolers, and they really weren't very good for more hardcore games.
The controller was fine. I can understand the Nintendo 64 controller. A lot of people complained how bad the controller was back then. I've never had a Nintendo 64 controller, but I watch a lot of content creators that play a lot of older retro games back then, and they did complain that some of the control schemes in the game were really terrible. But the GameCube, you really don't need two sticks for movement. I can understand if you're like playing a what is it, like a twin stick shooter or something like that, where you require two sticks. But back then with the GameCube, one stick was fine. There is another stick, I think it's called the C stick for camera, specifically for the camera. But that's usually what games require nowadays. Two sticks, one for control and one for camera. Because back then on older consoles, they didn't have a stick for just the camera, but now we do. So I don't know why he's complaining about how it's not for hardcore gaming. Most games on the GameCube weren't that controller heavy when it came to like having a bunch of like buttons to where you have to do all these things like they do now, but eh.
Now, a lot of people, I'm sure, oh, how dare you say that? There were games like Smash and things that everyone loved. That's fine, but the bottom line is that controller didn't have the design of a lot of modern controllers. The dual.
Because back then a lot of games weren't in that type of like modern era frame like they are today. Gaming back then was still relatively simple. It started pushing the envelope for what they can do with games, but it was still relatively simple back then. It didn't start getting hardcore territory in my opinion until like maybe the PS3, Xbox 360 generation with that specific hardware. Before then, even with the PS2, the games still had some form of simplicity to them. They weren't overly simple like the GameCube or the Game Boy or whatever, but it was simple enough to where, it was still learning, but it was getting better, but it wasn't like Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 or Wii or whatever. It wasn't really like modern yet.
Thumbsticks with the placement, the four face buttons that look like normal face buttons, the multiple triggers. It was a weird controller, and I didn't like it. I disliked it immensely. And I remember trying to play the game, and I was like, oh, I kept fumbling with it. And I just got so frustrated at one point, and I just stopped playing the game. And that's unfortunate because, later on it becomes a classic, and everyone's like, it's the best Resident Evil in the series. But at least, you know what? At least I'm taking the time to come back here at a later date and to explore and appreciate the game. So enough of me gabbing. Without further ado, let's go ahead and let's do our begin the playthrough of Resident Evil 4 HD. And as always, when I'm starting a new playthrough, for those of you who are watching on the stream chat, I do ask if you give me some feedback on the volume levels, as I have no idea what the volume levels are.
Unfortunately, Resident Evil 4 has really bad audio mixing, so regardless of like anything with audio, with what he's talking about with settings, you don't have any fixing the settings. Like the reason why I don't do commentary when I stream 4 is for that reason, because the audio mixing is bad. So like when I be talking, the my audio will be drowned out by in-game audio because the music for the game is way too loud and there's no way to fix it, which is unfortunate because I really like doing commentary videos. I just can't when I'm live because if I try to speak, you guys are not going to be able to hear me because when I play back the video, I'm like, why do I sound like I'm underwater? Like what am I going to do?
If they're any good, and I want to make sure that it's not blaringly loud and deafening everyone. If we could, please. Oh shit. It's serious when the borders of the picture don't even reach the edge of the fucking screen.
Because back then a lot of games were on CTR TVs. They weren't on widescreen, unfortunately. I don't remember when widescreen like became a definitive thing for games, but back then a lot of games were on CTR TVs, which didn't have widescreen formats yet. All he has to do is just go to the settings and fix it, but he's gonna complain for a few minutes about, oh, it doesn't fit. We'll just go to the settings, Phil, and it will be fixed.
Look at that. It doesn't reach the edge of the screen. We're gonna have to fix that. Okay. Autosave feature. Create save game data. Alright.
Okay, so at this point, he's gonna be almost halfway close to actually playing the game, but one thing that really grinds my gears as a viewer, so much as a content creator, is when content creators make content where they're like fooling around with audio and learning controls. In my opinion, this stuff should be done before you stream, not during the stream, because it pads out the video and it kind of ruins the purpose of actually watching the person play the game, in my opinion. Most people just want to see you play and, play along. They want to like watch you play the game instead of watching you go through menus. And even as a content creator myself, I just start the game. I don't fool around with controls. I learn as I play. And if I have to fix the audio while I'm streaming, fine and dandy. But when I'm actually starting the game at the very beginning, I don't go through all this stuff in order to stream. I don't understand why he did this now. He should have done this before he started streaming, not during stream. I don't even know if it's a stream or recording. I don't know what it is, but he should have done this beforehand, not during.
Screen settings. Here we go. Yeah, let's actually make the screen fit the freaking screen. How about that? How about we get it to fit? That was odd. There we go. There we go. Now it fits. Let's see here. Brightness, by default, we're going to up the brightness. As you guys know, usually when I do these playthroughs, the brightness is a little too low. I'm almost going to say start here, and if it's too bright, we'll lower it. Controller setup. Let's take a look here. Alright, well, here's my controls.
And he's gonna be on this screen for quite a while, but this is what I mean, like, this is non-10. You're not really doing anything. I understand you want to learn the controls and learn how to play the game, but learn as you play and get familiar with the controls that way. So you can kind of get a feel for how they work, so as you play the game, you start to get better with the controls and you start to improve. But staring at a screen and learning it that way it kind of just gives you a little taste of the controls, but you're not actually doing anything. So I don't understand why he stayed on this, reading it, and taking way too long learning the controls when he could have learned the controls as he played. And it would have been better for him to do that, but no, he decides to sit and stare at a screen for like a couple of minutes or so.
Swing your knife. Left trigger plus X. Ready your knife, just left trigger. Move the left thumbstick. Rotate right and left, forward and back. Thumbstick, okay. Or you could use the D-pad as well. Oh, you get the options. Right trigger plus X is fire. Right trigger plus A is reload. Now, this is weird. So left trigger are knife attacks. Right trigger are gun attacks. That is dramatically different from the modern command scheme. What's type 2? Ah...
This one I don't like because I'm not used to using both back buttons to shoot. I prefer the type 1 because I like how you just hold button to aim and then the X button to shoot, which is more in tune with some of the games that I play, so it's easier. But I guess because he plays other games, like I think he also plays shooters, so I can kind of understand I'm liking the L1, not the L1, I play PlayStation, but the LT and RT. I think that's more comfortable for him if he plays more games like that. But for me, I don't play shooters, so I really don't need both back buttons, but we'll see.
Type 2 turns it into a modern command scheme. Left trigger plus right trigger fires. Left trigger plus A reloads. Readying your weapon and left trigger. Left bumper plus right trigger swings the knife. That's weird. Oh my goodness. Both control types are weird. Gonna have to get used to this. Alright, action. Run is with A. Map is Y. Action is A. B does nothing.
B is to cancel, Phil. It literally says in plain English on the bottom that it says cancel. It does have a function, it's just not for in-game purposes. It's for menus, Phil. I don't know why you just can't see it says cancel B over right here, bud. It's right there.
B has no function according to this. We're gonna have to mess around with this a little bit when we start. I think type 2 is better because it has the trigger controls for firing, but I think this is gonna be weird with the knife. We're gonna have to mess around a little bit. Okay, Command Ashley with right bumper, yada yada. Alright, let's keep this one. Let's keep type 2. Alright. How to play.
This part, I really don't understand why he did this because a lot of the information that is given to you in this is literally when you open the game up, after the opening cutscenes. Saving and loading in Resident Evil is very common knowledge that the typewriter, regardless if you need ink ribbons or you don't, that's how you save. So I don't know why he opened this part. This part is very self-explanatory. When you open it, everything is laid out for you, so it's kind of easy to understand. So I don't know why he opened this, and the same thing with this. This literally is just the case, and this is literally just regular gameplay with stuff that's obvious, like Leon's health and everything else. So I don't know why he opened all of these three. I don't know what purpose it serves.
What is this? Huh? Alright. Search for typewriters within the stage to save your progress in the game. Resume your game by loading your saved data. Okay. So just like old classic Resident Evil games, it's all done at the typewriter.
Sort of, because Resident Evil 4 doesn't have ink ribbons I don't know if like in the demo of the game, like they used to have demo discs back then. They didn't have demos like we have now, where you have to download them or they're available on the store. But for this game, there's no ink ribbons, so it's still use a typewriter to save, but you don't need ink ribbons to save like in the older titles, which is kind of good. But I know a lot of people miss the ink ribbons. That's why they were kind of brought back in 9 with Grace only. Leon doesn't need ink ribbons because he saves on a damn computer. He saves on a computer.
Gotcha.
Like, see, look, this is just basic information, game information. Like, do you really need to know, Phil, that this is you in the game and this is health and the ammo that you have? It's like Thursday, bro. You don't need to open this. Why?
Your player, action button, remaining ammo. There's your health, okay. It's cool learning the HUD ahead of time. And here's your status screen.
Like, see, look, all this stuff is very self-explanatory. That's why I don't understand why he opened this. If you had prior experience of being 4, even though you didn't get that far, this would have been open regardless, because if you have to heal or you have to change weapons or, you have to move things around, this will always be opened up. And when I do my videos, I always cut this stuff out because it's boring in my opinion, and I don't think you guys want to watch me fool around with my case and for a good like couple of seconds to a couple of minutes. But like I said, this is like relatively self-explanatory, so I don't know why he wanted to see this beforehand, when if he played 4 already, probably have an idea of how this works. But I think this version of 4's case is better because it has an actual charm to it, not like remake 4's where it's just a case floating in the ether and you just move stuff around. But this actually has like a background, has Mr. Baby Girl Kennedy, it has some kind of life to it. It's not just a void of nothingness with a case floating inside of it.
Key treasures, weapons recovery, map, files, and exit, and your in-game currency. Highlight the items you want to equip or use. Select equip or use to perform that command, and start button to open this. Alright, cool. Here we go. New game. Resident Evil. Whoa! What the?
Wow, it took him almost a full, like, he started at 8:42. So from this point beforehand, all it was just content. All of that could have been edited out, in my opinion. He should have just kept the spiel about 4 short and cut out the rest of the other stuff and had a better paced video.
The fuck? Resident Evil 4. I smoke 3 packs a day.
Also, just a heads up, Phil does like to talk during cutscenes, and as a viewer, I never liked when content creators talk during cutscenes because some people, when they watch these types of videos, it's like their first time viewing the game because they either want to watch the game because they don't have access to it, or they want to see another person play it, or they want to get a feel for the game before they purchase it so they can kind of get an idea of how the game is. So when you talk over cutscenes, it's annoying for some people because they want to hear the game, they don't want to necessarily hear the content creator that they're watching. And it's not hard to wait a couple of minutes to like let the cutscene play and then talk and then give your opinion about it, because it defeats the purpose of watching it with you and your viewers. That's why I really don't talk during cutscenes. And when I do challenge runs, I skip the cutscenes because I already have a video series or a playlist on my channel that has all the cutscenes and the game already. So there's no point in me showing the cutscenes again. But I think Phil should have just waited and let the cutscene play instead of talking over it, because the audio mixing is already bad as it is in Resident Evil 4, where you can really not barely hear it. It's either way too low or way too high. So when he talks over it, sometimes he drowns out the actual cutscene and you can barely hear it as it is.
98. I'll never forget it. It was the year when those grisly murders occurred in the Arklay Mountains. Soon after, the news was out to the whole world, revealing that it was the fault of a secret viral experiment conducted by the international pharmaceutical enterprise, Umbrella.
Oh shit.
The virus broke out in a nearby mountain community, Raccoon City, and hit the peaceful little town with a devastating blow crippling its very foundation.
Raccoon City got fucked.
Not take
When I was editing this with my first video that I had to redo because I had a lot of audio issues, I thought that the audio ding was something else because I thought it was like my phone or something else, but it was his phone or whatever it was. I was I was confused because I'm like, is that me or is that Phil?
taking any chances, the President of the United States ordered a contingency plan to sterilize Raccoon City.
That's right, everyone lost their ability to reproduce.
And the messed up thing is that Capcom actually retconned this in 9 because in 9 they're like, oh, nobody issued the nuke or the missile or whatever. In this Resident Evil 4, they were talking about the fact that it was done to like sterilize or eliminate the city, which I don't understand why they retconned it. I think they wanted to change something, but I always hated when companies they have like their older titles and then when they bring back the franchise in a modern way they always have to retcon something. I don't know why they just can't keep the narrative as is and just build upon it instead of retconning it and like pretending it never happened when it's awkward playing the older games and going back to them and saying to yourself, so all this was retconned and changed. So it's kind of hard to follow the narrative when there's two separate universes or two separate tellings of the story, and it kind of defeats the purpose of playing the older games sometimes because it's like this continuity doesn't exist anymore in a modern continuity.
The whole affair gone public.
When they died.
The United States government issued an indefinite suspension of business decree to Umbrella. Soon its stock prices crashed, and for all intents and purposes, Umbrella was finished.
Da-da-da.
And his phone or whatever it is goes off again. Like ding, ding, fries are done, ding, fries are done. I gotta run, I gotta run.
Resident Evil
6 years
4.
have passed since that horrendous incident.
Starring Mila Jovovich. Wait, that's something else.
Yeah, that's the movies that nobody really likes talking about because people think they're really bad. I never personally watched them, but what I heard, they're cringe-worthy.
What the fuck?
Phil, please don't diss on the classic of that music or Resident Evil 4 that's associated with it. Everybody loves that art, and it's like, bro, don't be that person that disses on the music for.
I received special training via a secret organization working under the direct control of the president.
Why are there no
I
subtitles?
was to assume
Because back then a lot of games didn't have subtitles, which is unfortunate because, like I said, because of this bad sound mixing, it's very hard for you to hear certain things. It's a shame that they don't have subtitles or an option for subtitles. But, like in modern games now, subtitles are always mostly the case, but back then a lot of games didn't have subtitles. If they did, it was either in box, like little, what is it called? Dialogue boxes. Or they had dialogue boxes because that was the only way that they had text because they didn't have voice actors. Like older games, especially Final Fantasy, didn't have voice acting. So they just had dialogue boxes. So that was a way that they had subtitles because they didn't have voice actors talking over the cutscenes or the text.
the responsibility of protecting the new president's family.
There's no subtitles. Great.
Coño, why am I the one who always gets the short end of the stick? You, who are you really? Come on, tell us. You are a long way from home, cowboy. You have my sympathies.
Guess that's a local's way of
Ay, ay,
breaking
ay,
the
ay.
ice.
Ay, 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 ay,
Anyway,
ay,
you know what this is all about. My assignment is to search for the president's missing daughter.
What? All by yourself?
What? That big slut? Everyone knows she's a
Boys
big
didn't
slut
just tag
bang.
along so we could
Phil, why are you talking about Ashley like that? Yes, Ashley might be annoying, but I don't think she's that person, Phil.
sing Kumbaya together at some Boy Scout bonfire. Then again, maybe you did.
Oh, you crazy American. It's a direct order from the chief himself. I tell you, it's no picnic.
I'm counting on you guys.
Oh, the president's daughter is out slumming again. Ho ho ho, how hilarious. You're just an overblown bodyguard. Ho ho ho.
It was right before I was to take on my duties of protecting the president's daughter when she was abducted. That's the ultimate reason I'm in this lonely and rural part of Europe.
Oh
According to our
no.
intelligence, there's reliable information about a sighting of a girl that looks very similar to the president's daughter. Apparently, she's being withheld by some unidentified group of people. Who would have thought that my first job would have been a rescue mission?
We're in Eastern Europe. Great. Oh, this looks like a safe place to piss.
Well, nature calls, Phil. I highly doubt he could hold it much longer. Oh, it happens.
It's freezing. So cold all of a sudden.
It's the roadside piss creeper.
What? What was that?
I see
Must be
you.
my imagination. Sorry it took so long.
All right.
Just up ahead is the village.
I'll go and have a look around.
We'll stay and watch the car. Don't want to get any parking tickets.
Right. Parking tickets.
It's like, right, parking tickets. Parking tickets, sir? I highly doubt there's gonna be a cop that's gonna give you a parking ticket out in the nowhere. I think it's because I just didn't want to leave the car, but I always found this part funny. Because when I was watching, like, one of the earlier builds of Resident Evil, or before they had the voice actor change Leon's, like, voice with how deep it was funny. It was hilarious. I found it to be funny, this part with the older build versus the newer build. It's funny.
Look.
Jeez. Who are these guys?
Did you say something?
No, I said fuck your mother. He completely ignored
I
them.
hope you can hear me. I'm Ingrid Hunnigan. I'll be your support on this mission.
Loud
the
and
hell?
clear. Somehow I thought you'd be a little older.
The game just turned into Metal Gear
So the
Solid.
subject's name's Ashley Graham, right?
That's right. She's the daughter of the president. So try to behave yourself, okay?
Whoever this group is, they sure picked the wrong girl to kidnap.
I'll try to find some more information on my end as well.
Good. Talk to you later. Leon out.
All right. So we finally.
Like, this would be the ideal starting point, in my opinion, for like a video, minus the cutscenes, because if you're doing a first playthrough, that's fine to have the cutscenes in, but that's why when I always do challenge runs, I start here, or I start exactly at the village fight. But this would have been a perfect opportunity for him to learn the controls here, before he actually goes in the house and initiates the first fight with any of the enemies in the game. But he starts fooling around with the controls here, but he should have done that instead of staring at the controls on the control screen instead. But he's gonna waste a little bit more time learning the controls before he even fights the Ganado.
Controlling Leon. Oh lord. Oh god, he could.
The controls in this game are kind of like still sort of tank control-y, but not really. But it's not that bad. In my opinion, forest controls are not as bad as like the older games where every time like you move, sometimes your character gets, as you're walking, they kind of like go on an incline or whatever, but that's par for the course because they're older games. But this one isn't too bad. When I first played this game, it was weird for me because the games I play mostly are RPGs or platformers. I really don't play these types of games that much. Like, the only reason why I got into Resident Evil was because a person I know got me into the game because we like to recommend games to each other, and they recommended Resident Evil for me. And I never played horror games before. I'm a horror movie buff, but I'm not into horror games that much. So, and I'm glad that I was given this series because I genuinely enjoy it now. But I think he should have just learned the controls as he played and not wasted that much time.
Controls like a tank. Oh no. Alright, the 180 turn is back in A. Here's our knife. You aim. Wait a minute. I changed the control scheme, yet it's still using the other control scheme. I'm not even kidding. I changed it, but it's not using it. Yeah, it went back to Type 1. What the flip? Alright, let's try again. It reverted the controls, even though I had already saved them. Great. There we go.
I think it's because maybe Type 1 is a default and you have to change directly to Type 2 when game starts. I personally don't use Type 2, I like 1 better, but I think that might have been the case, but I really don't know because like I said, I always use Type 1 regardless. It's more comfortable for me personally.
So you aim with left trigger, and I'm using left thumbstick here, and then right trigger fires. Now how do I use my knife? Alright, knife is left bumper. You just slash around, I guess. Okay.
The knife is really good for when you stun after you stun enemies. Like I noticed a mistake that he does is instead of attacking the enemies when they're stunned with the knife, he doesn't do that. Because most of the time when you use the knife, I'm okay at 9. I mean at 9-4, I'm alright with it. But for new players, I really don't suggest using the knife unless the enemies are stunned or down because they can retaliate very easily and you really can't stun lock them unless you repeatedly slash. If you're pausing, they can just retaliate, especially if they have a weapon like a hatchet or pitchfork or something. It's very easy for them to retaliate, and then you get hurt, and then yourself gets unlocked instead, and not the enemies.
There you go. Yes, there you go. So now right thumbstick moves the camera left or right, but you still to turn you need to use left thumbstick. Wow. Alright, this is going to take a while to get used to. Graphics aren't too bad. Oh, it's a crow. Hello. I'll shoot you. Waste my ammo. Because, you know, in Resident Evil, there's always an overabundance of ammo.
Not always. Like, I can understand the modern games like 4, 5, and 6. I don't know about 7 or 8 because I have 8, but I barely played it and I'm not playing 7. Those games, I guess, give you a lot of ammo, but the older games, they sure as hell don't. Unless you play at a lower difficulty, they'll give you more ammo, but if you play on normal or whatever, they barely give you anything. So, not really. That's why in like those games, you have to like pick and choose when you're going to use the ammo because you need the ammo for bosses or hunters or enemies that are actually really lethal compared to the zombies. But in this game, they do give you a lot of ammo, but he didn't say that this game has dynamic difficulty depending on how well you play on normal. It affects how many enemies you have, what ammo drops or barely no ammo drops, and I don't think he ever talks about that at the moment. I hope for his sake, game doesn't get overly hard for him because he sometimes gets overwhelmed as he plays because Phil doesn't really in a nice way, Phil struggles sometimes with games. And I think if he spent time learning and trying to grow playing the game, he'll get better as it goes. But I personally didn't go too far in this series at the moment because it's 90 something videos. Instead of him just compiling all of them into like sections like Village, Castle, Island, it's just like multiple videos. I think there's like 30 videos of just the village. Because when I was editing the original video, which I scrapped because it has too many problems, he took like 10 videos just to do 1 and 2, which in my opinion is way too long. He should have just put them together instead of having this one is like 19 minutes and the next video is 5 minutes. Kind of uneven when it comes to the video length. He could have just put them together and uploaded it as one video.
There's no reason to not just start shooting everything. Right. Oh shit. The fuck's that?
Obviously, it's a villager and a person, Phil.
I just want to be sure that there's no, subtitles. I don't think there are, though. There's screens. Yeah, there's not. Screen settings, brightness adjusted controller. They didn't bother putting subtitles in the game. That's nice. Oh, well. Hello? Knock, knock. Oh, whoa. Shit. Fuck was that? There are various small items on the shelf. Nothing particularly unusual here. It sounds like he's dying.
And there's our majestic baby girl.
Excuse me. Sir?
Is he deaf? I guess he could be. He looks
I was
pissed.
wondering if you might recognize the girl in this photograph.
¿Qué carajo estás haciendo aquí? Lárgate, cabrón!
Whoa! Whoa,
Sorry to
whoa,
have
whoa.
bothered you.
Cabron. Call me cabron. Holy shit! What an asshole!
Freeze! I said freeze!
And this part, Phil does struggle with the Ganado. In my opinion, he should have just either shot Ganado in face area or the legs and then started swiping the knife, but he makes the mistake of swiping the knife early while the enemy is not stunned and then he gets hit. So he should have either shot the Ganado in his head or his legs, either kicked him or shot him a few times and then used the knife. Because when you use the knife too early, and since the Ganado has a hatchet, the Ganado can basically retaliate and hit him. So he kind of made a mistake here, but I don't know why Phil just didn't use the gun instead of using the knife, because the Ganados really don't take that much bullets if you sparse them out, but you'll see right now that he makes the mistake, and I don't know why he did this.
Fuck this guy. Oh shit!
As if you saw he missed the knife hit and then the Ganado hit him. It would have been better, like I said, if he shot the Ganado and then used the knife, save ammo, because the village fight takes a lot, which you'll guys see later when I continue, that he wastes way too much ammo. And I always give people the strat to run around because it saves ammo, because in the village fight, if you do it on a new save, you'll waste so much ammo that you won't have it for later. So it's always important to conserve ammo instead of wasting it. The knife is a good way of saving ammo, especially in this version. And the remake, since the knife has durability, you really can't like spam use it, but in the OG, the knife is infinite, so you don't have that problem.
Man.
Like, he also made the mistake of swiping the knife and not continuing to swiping it while the enemy was stunned for like a brief moment, because if you move away, the enemy can just hit you again. So I don't know why he didn't just back up a little bit and then start shooting, because, you know, he made the mistake of also trying to use a knife again on an unstunned enemy.
Dodge! Well, I already took massive damage. What the hell? What the hell's going on out there?
Shit.
Is everything okay?
There was a hostile local.
Oh yeah, I just killed
I
a
had no
local.
choice but to neutralize him. There are still others surrounding the area.
Get out of there and head toward the village. Take whatever measures necessary to save the subject.
Understood.
Yeah, so if he would have done that, he would have saved his health, because in the beginning of the game, you don't get that much health as it is. You start getting health until much later once the yellow herbs are available to you, which will be in the village. I think the village gives you one, the village fight. But I think if he would have, like I said, shot the Ganado first and then used the knife, he would have been able to keep the health that he had for the village fight without having to use the first aid spray later. But I think if he would have done that, he would have been fine. But like I said, it's like a learning experience. But I think Phil would have done better if he would have just shot the Ganado, used the knife, and then went upstairs and then shot the Ganados from the window. I always do that because, especially in the very beginning of the game when you don't have that much resources, it's easier to just either shoot them from far away so you don't take damage, because, like I said, Leon doesn't have enough health to constitute getting hit. Just hopefully Phil starts to get better, but unfortunately Phil really doesn't.
How do you dodge? I have no idea how to dodge. He's not a zombie.
Unfortunately, Phil, there's no dodge mechanic in OG4. It's not like the modern games where Leon does backflips. Like here, you can shoot the enemies even if you don't have a rifle in New Game Plus. You can shoot them from here because you can get the one here and then there's one closer to the door. So you'd only have one enemy to deal with and not three of them. Because for a new player like him, it would be harder to deal with three enemies at once versus one at a time. So I think he would have been better off shooting them here instead of jumping out the window and dealing with all three of them at once.
What items do I have? I have a first aid spray. I'm probably gonna have to fucking use. Huh. There's no dodge in this game, I don't think. There's no way to dodge anything. You just gotta shoot people.
And also, there's two windows that you can exit. You can exit the one on the second floor, and then there's one by the door. But that one by the door, I don't think, I never went that way before. I don't know if it's better or worse compared to the one on the second floor, but I don't know why he just didn't see that you were supposed to go through the window. But he does go back downstairs, then he goes back upstairs again.
Oh lord. They're burning the fucking house down.
Te voy a hacer picadillo.
Oh shit. It won't budge. They must be pressing against it from the other side. What the fuck?
Míralo. Está herido.
How the fuck do I get out of here? What the hell? Severed heads!
The maggots look like little pieces of rice that are like jiggling. little rice maggots. They wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Looks like they killed a lot of people. Oh! I hope Ashley's okay. What the fuck, dude? Fucking serious? How do I get out of this house?
Break the window. Fail.
Jump out. What the fuck? Yes, Leon's become Superman. Oh my god! No! Run! Holy.
Well, I'm going to end it here, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the reaction. If you guys like the reaction videos, I'll continue them. The only reason why I ended the video is because the video only has a couple more seconds left, and the next video is only 5 minutes long, so the next reaction video, if you guys like these videos, I will do video 2 and video 3 together. I just wanted to do this one by itself, so I kind of get a feel of how reaction videos are, but I hope you guys had a good time. Adios. See you again later, some other time.